So the Christian doesn't just ask, have I done the deed, but rather, am I pure? Do I have a pure heart? Where have my eyes been today? So we don't ask how far is too far. Rather say, how can I keep myself pure in my mind, my thoughts, my actions? But that still doesn't go right to the bottom. Now, like a master surgeon, Paul goes and opens our hearts and goes right to the root of sexual sin. And this might be one of the light bulb moments for you. If you've been struggling with sexual sin, you just never could get victory or walk in obedience, is because maybe you haven't been chopping at the root. And look at the bottom of a sexually addicted heart. Look at verse 3. All impurity or covetousness. Covetousness. Now, that sin almost seems out of place, right? We're talking about sexual sins and impurity, and suddenly, covetousness. Like, that almost feels like it doesn't fit here. But indeed, this is really at the bottom of your sexual sin and at the bottom of your sexual temptations. God is helping us knowing what type of a heart is lusting, what type of a heart is falling into sexual sin. It is the heart that says, I want more. It's a covetous heart, a greedy heart. For the married, this heart looks like this. I want more than my wife. I want more than my husband. For the single, this heart says, God, you haven't given me enough. I want more, and I'm going to look for it in places where you have told me not to go. Remember that this comes from the 10th commandment. This is the 10th commandment, thou shalt not covet. Look at the fool. I think we sometimes forget how broad this commandment is. Just look at Exodus 20, verse 17. This is what God says. He says, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. This commandment just cuts our hearts open, exposes it to all of us. It shows that the 10 commandments really isn't just about external deeds. It shows that when Jesus said, do not even look at a woman with lustful intent, he's actually just interpreting it in the light of the 10th commandment, because where does all adultery begin? With a look. Where does all stealing begin? Coveting someone's possessions, coveting someone's things. You see, so it always starts at the heart and then it moves to the deed. But notice that all of these sins, right? The first one, he says, do not covet your neighbor's house. Can't we live in that house? You know? Or, I wish we were in that neighborhood that those people are in. Do not covet your neighbor's wife. Wow, look how beautiful his wife is. Wow, she aged well. Why can't my husband be better with the kids than that wife's husband? Right? Why can't my children just be a little bit more obedient? Then look at those children. They seem to do everything the parents say. Now, I just want to clarify, the sin of coveting doesn't exclude the desire to want to be married, or desire to want to live in a nice house, in a nice neighborhood, or the desire to want obedient children. All of those things are good, okay? The problem is, coveting focuses on wanting somebody else's house, somebody else's wife, somebody else's obedient children. Do you see that the focus is on the person? Remember, the second table of the law is, you shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. Coveting is essentially selfish. It's essentially refusing to rejoice with somebody else's blessings and wanting those blessings for yourself. So it's not wrong to want a nice house or nice possessions, or even to be married if you're single. That's good. The problem is when you want somebody else's house, somebody else's wife or husband. And listen to me. This can be extremely liberating to you. Because maybe for a long time, especially if you've been battling with sexual sins, you've been just chopping the branches of sexual sin, right? You're just trying to cut off the fruit, but you don't look at the root. You don't look at what is right at the bottom of your temptation. And God says it's coveting. It's saying to God, you owe me. You owe me pleasure. You owe me joy. I will take this. And now Paul shows us the full picture of coveting in verse 5. Look at what he calls coveting in verse 5 something else. He says, "For you may be sure of this, everyone who is sexually immoral or impure or who is covetous." And then he says what a covetous person is. That is what? An idolater. Isn't that so enlightening? When you are coveting, the simple innocent sin of just wanting somebody else's things or wanting more than you have, God says you have traded him for an idol. You are worshipping other gods. So right at the bottom of sexual sin is idolatry. Not being satisfied with God, not believing that he is enough for you. God is not sufficient for them. God is not their supreme joy and their delight. In such a way that even if we lose everything, we can say with Paul, to die. If I lose everything on earth, to die is gain. If I only have God, I'm making a profit. A covetous heart looks at what he has and says to God, God, you owe me. You owe me. I still deserve more pleasure from you. I'm not happy with this house. I'm not happy with my body. I'm not happy with my wife or my husband. I want more. And that's why the breaking of the 10th commandment is really the breaking of the first commandment, right? What's the first commandment? You shall have no other gods before me. So coveting is to have other gods before him. Is to want something more than God. So test yourself this afternoon. If you say this, if I only had blank, then I would be happy. If I only had this, then I would be satisfied. Then I would be significant. Then I would be secure. That is your functional God.
Wait. Before you go, if you found value from this video, remember to like, subscribe, and to ring the bell to be notified of every new video on Books of the Wise, where we talk about theology, good books, and the Bible. God bless.